Good. So welcome today to Reflections, the Wisdom of Edgar Cayce. And today we're talking to Anthony Profeta, who's a sound healer, a meditation master, an avid Edgar Cayce student. So I'm really looking forward to this enlightened conversation with Anthony. Anthony, thank you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Peter. It's a true honor to be here with you today and everyone at the Edgar Cayce A.R.E. And I appreciate you asking me to come and talk with you today. I really look forward to our discussion.
Same here, same here. I know that it seems that your work has moved more into doing the sound work, like the bowls and the sound baths, I guess they're called. And I know that you will be speaking here in the future. And so people, during our talk, there'll be a link where people can find out how to connect with you. But let's start with just your background with Edgar Cayce. How'd you find out about Edgar Cayce and all that good stuff?
My Edgar Cayce experience is one that I hold near and dear to my heart because I truly believe it's definitely what propelled me deep into my spiritual journey. And about the age of 15 or 16 years old, I walked into my father's office, and he has books all along the walls. And I was scanning the bookshelves trying to find something to read. And there was a book there, but there were a couple of books, but one of them was called the Edgar Cayce Collection. And then there was another about Edgar Cayce healings and all that. And I pulled the Cayce collection down saying, who's this guy? And so let me check this book out. And as soon as I opened it up and started reading about his life and what he was able to do in his channeled trance readings and help people that sort of medical conditions weren't having any benefit or help with, I became fascinated by this. And I started reading the entire book like I couldn't put it down because it began to open up a whole new world to me, one that I sort of always knew was out there, but not how to really put my head around it or have the tools to really connect with it. I did grow up in a Italian spiritual religious family. We grew up Catholic, so I had the belief in God and the spiritual world that was beyond this physical one that we're in. But the Cayce material really gave me like the key to accessing that, and I became fascinated with anything I could find on the Cayce material. I began at about my senior year of high school to drive down to the A.R.E. down in Virginia Beach, take courses and workshops by people who were there. And it has really been a very humbling experience because now the stage that I was sitting in the audience, watching teachers speak from, I've now had the great honor to also stand on and give some teachings on meditation and sound baths as well. So Cayce is a big near and dear, holds a place in my heart.
Oh, that's a great story. It's always nice to hear about folks that have been inspired by Edgar Cayce and that it's in some ways informed sort of the rest of their life and certainly the work that they're doing. So that's great to hear. Now, what was your dad's profession when you walked into his office? He was what?
He was in business. He was just a businessman. He owned a couple. He was self-employed. He owned a couple of stores, like 5 and 10 stores around the New York, Jersey area. But he did have a aspect to himself that he was very fascinated by spiritual things. Both of my parents were. And what was very wonderful was they were open-minded. Even though we were from a Catholic family, they both took transcendental meditation courses in like the late 70s. So if I began to question things, they never said, oh, you have to believe this because so-and-so says, or the Pope says. They'd always say, well, we don't maybe know the answer to that, but go find out. Talk to people who do. So I was blessed with the opportunity to have very open-minded parents.
Wow, it sounds like we were twins raised in different families. My parents were Catholic, and then they also learned transcendental meditation when I was 17, and they were also open-minded about other traditions. Now, were you?
I love that.
And then, so your father had never mentioned Edgar Cayce to you before you walked into his office?
Never, but he was fascinated by the natural healing aspects of it. So he would try to live his life according to the Cayce diet and regimen and those sort of things of eating, a certain number of above ground vegetables compared to
hardcore. It's hard to find people that do that 3-to-1 ratio. Now, how did they feel about you getting so enthusiastic about the Cayce work and coming down here? They were just cool with it?
They did actually. I have to be honest. My father actually funded my first conference at the Edgar Cayce Center because I was
Oh,
a high school student. I
yeah,
really didn't have extra
yeah,
money,
yeah.
so he paid for me to attend that conference and go down there and spend the weekend there.
And then
So
did he
he's
did he ask you a
definitely
lot of
supportive.
questions about what you learned, what you gained, what it was like?
To be honest, he didn't ask many, but he did ask me how it was and what I took away from it.
Oh,
And so,
that's
but
great.
I didn't think go much further. Yes. Yeah.
And then, so what? I mean, I remember and from your bio, it talked that you started off as a medical student, and then somehow
I
that wasn't your calling, and you went from
did.
medicine, then you got into meditation. It sounds like you traveled around the world and studied with a lot of masters, and then eventually, anyway, I'm telling your story, but flesh that out for us. Kind of what
Sure.
happened from high school to now
Sure. I
in
actually got
in a minute now.
I actually got into meditation actually before I did enter medical school. The Cayce material really brought into my mind how important meditation is. But I
Mhm.
cannot say I was an everyday meditator at that time. I just sort of was trying to figure out what it was all about.
Yeah.
And in the year 2000, I actually got into a formal meditation practice through a tradition called Kriya Yoga. And
Hmm.
this is interesting too, because the way I discovered what Kriya Yoga was because of the Edgar Cayce bookstore. I was in the bookstore, and Paramahansa Yogananda's book,
Yeah.
Autobiography of a Yogi, was on the bookshelf, and the
Yes.
eyes, no matter where I walked in the store, were like looking at me. So I said, okay, I need to buy this book,
Yeah,
which I
we
bought
do that
there.
at the bookstore. It helps sell the books. We move the eyes so that track the people. No, just kidding.
And so I purchased it at the A.R.E. and then became fascinated on that book. That was
Yeah,
another
that's
book
a
that was.
seminal book.
It is, and so I wanted to know what this is all about, and I went to a weekend initiation into Kriya Yoga in the year 2000, and that's when I became heavy into the practice. And then once I was on my journey, I always knew I wanted to help people on their journey towards self-healing. So I thought that was going to be as a doctor. And I
Hmm.
entered medical school in New York City to go work on that path. But a
Hmm.
couple of things happened. One is that I began to see that according to the American Medical Association, the AMA, their own research and their studies attest to the fact that 80% of all illness and disease in this world, there's one main root cause, and that root cause is stress.
Hmm.
However, sadly, they're not teaching us doctors ways to help people manage stress on a more regular basis.
Yeah.
They're not really giving us the tools to help people navigate the stressful world. They and they teach us really to treat symptoms.
Hmm.
So a symptom showing, and what are we going to do to help alleviate that symptom in the
Right.
person?
Yeah.
Now, not every doctor does this, but the majority just write a prescription that takes the symptom away.
Right.
And if you do that,
And then
and you
if you have side effects of the medication, they give you another medication to deal with those side
have you
effects.
to go down. And
Yeah.
yep, and if the stressor's there, but you just take the symptom away, the stressor says you didn't do anything about me. So,
Right.
you left me here. Now I'm going to have to go to another organ system, another part of the body, and create disease, DIS-EASE,
Right.
somewhere else. And so I didn't want to do that. I wanted to help people get at the underlying root cause of illness and disease. And so I began to really focus my attention rather, because I knew from my own firsthand direct experience how much my meditation practice helped me through very stressful times of my life. I
Hmm.
began to look at research articles on meditation not as a spiritual practice, which is why I did get on the path, but rather from a health and wellness perspective. And as of today, I mean, there are articles from Duke, Harvard, Wake Forest that scientifically prove how meditation does help us de-stress the body naturally and get to that underlying root cause. And so I began to take a much more holistic sort of turn in my practice.
Oh yeah, it's almost like every month there's more data coming out. Like recently I looked up I'd like to be up to date on the research on meditation, and the last research I saw said that it decreases the rate at which your brain shrinks. Like, I don't know what that
Yeah.
means exactly, but it sounds like a good thing.
Oh,
Keeping your brain
it's,
as big as
it's a wonderful
possible.
thing. Yeah, and that study was actually done by Dr. Sarah Lazar out of Harvard University, in which she found that people who began to meditate actually increase the brain's the matter, the gray
Yeah.
matter, the white matter. You actually create new brain cells
You
and
get a
everything.
bigger, you get a bigger brain.
Your brain. Yeah, it's like taking your brain to the gym to work
Yeah.
it out.
That's true. Yeah, it gets the muscles. So,
Yes.
so you're in medical school. You're kind of having
Yep.
this disillusionment, and you're going deep into meditation. So then you decide to leave medical school, and then what do you do next? You follow a deeper meditation path.
Yes, at that point, what actually happens was I decided if I was going to follow this path, that I really needed to learn multiple tools. Because if I only knew one method of meditation, I couldn't help every mind that's out there because there's 7 billion people in this world.
Right.
And not everybody likes doing the exact same thing. Not
Right.
everybody eats steak. Not everybody eats sushi. Not everybody plays golf or tennis.
Right.
So if I only knew one method of meditation, there'd be people that wouldn't resonate with that. So I went off to India. I went to live in some monasteries of India, monasteries of Nepal, also some ashrams of India, studying Buddhist meditation practices, studying Vedic meditation practices, and trying to really gain a lot of tools to put in my toolbox so that I could come back and then have multiple methods that I could teach people depending on their particular personality to truly help them find what method of meditation works best for them.
As you're telling your story, I'm thinking about your dad. At some point, if he's saying, "Why didn't I hide those books?" He could have been a doctor. Now he's off in India, doing God knows what.
To be completely honest, the main factor of why I actually did leave was in my second year of medical school. My father went into the hospital for a pacemaker operation, and sadly, he caught a bug that no antibiotic could cure.
I see.
And
I'm sorry to hear that.
One night, that's okay.
Yeah.
The blessing in the passing, or the transition, I should say, the blessing in the transition was that he didn't go quickly. There were months that it took, and so everybody got to share what they needed to share. Nothing was left unsaid.
Oh,
We saw an
nice.
immense love of our family, of me and my brothers, sisters, and my mother, and everyone come together around this event. And one night I was sitting up in with my father, and he said to me, "You know, Anthony, I hope that what you're doing in life, you're just doing what you love. And you're not doing this because, me or your mother want you to be a doctor or have that good job." And so that really struck a chord in me. And so I really began to contemplate what it is I do live in. Yeah.
What a blessing. I think when we get our parents' blessing on a path, it's quite powerful. There are just so many parallels. My parents were both doctors. I'm the youngest of 4. My 3 siblings are all doctors, and so I was on the doctor path too. But they weren't so enamored of me not becoming a doctor. It took them some adjustment. But eventually, before they passed, they were very happy with what I was doing. They were interested also in metaphysics and Cayce stuff. I see. So then your dad gave you his blessing, and then you went and, I guess, pursued your bliss, or pursued what was resonating with your heart, and what you saw is kind of connected with your values and your intention, and it took you to India. And so what happened next? What happened after your learning and experiences in India?
My life actually changed drastically. I came back to the United States, and a lot of people did think I lost my mind, that I'm going from traditional medicine now.
Did you come back in a saffron robe or something and a shaved head?
I didn't come back with the robe, but yes, when I did come back, they thought you're going to go into meditation and mindfulness practices where, how are you going to pay your bills? Does that even work? So you're a yoga teacher now? Like, what are you doing?
So what year was this? Because you probably were ahead of the curve, because now mindfulness is like everywhere. So this was this the 70s or 80s or 90s?
No. This was actually in the 2000s.
2000s,
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So I graduated high school. I graduated college, actually, undergraduate, in 2003, and then went on to medical school after that.
Okay. So it's the 2000s. You come back to New York. You're enlightened. You're wanting to share this. So where do you go next with that?
Well, to be honest, I didn't come back to New York, even though that's where I was raised. My mother, after my father's passing, went to Florida full time,
I see, because
and
that's
so
where you are now. So you went
that's
to
where I am now.
Florida. Yeah.
So I went down to Florida and began to try to teach meditation. And let me tell you, in the beginning, I'd go, and luckily there were places that were receptive. Yeah, we'd love you to teach a course, but I'd be there and one person would show up or
Yeah.
nobody would show
Right.
up. So I figured, okay, this is for me to really test myself. Am I
Yeah.
passionate about this? Am I going to continue on, or am I going to get discouraged? And it's gotten to the point, well, before quarantine, where for the past couple of years now, my classes were selling out, my workshops were selling out. So I knew after a couple of years of maybe struggle, or, did I really make the right decision or not? I knew that I eventually was doing what I was supposed to be doing.
And then when did you start to include or to bring in sound and the bowls? How did that come into your wheelhouse, so to speak?
That happened about 4, maybe 5 years ago. And what happened was, well, one, I had an interaction with the bowls when I was in a in-depth meditation retreat at a Zen monastery. Because what they would do is they would gong this very big vase-like looking bowl in order to call us to the meditation hall, and then they would gong it again to start the session. And I always found that following the sound into the silence
Yes.
really helped me to center myself. And what I like to say is it helped me get into my inner silence pretty quickly.
Yes.
And I found it a very useful tool. And then I had a friend who was doing sound bath meditations with crystal bowls. And one day he invited me to attend his workshop. And I had the most profound experience from being in a room with these vibrations and these frequencies and these energies moving around me and through me. And it was really a palpable, tactile experience to feel it. And I was like, wow, this is pretty powerful. And so I began to think back on the Edgar Cayce material. And I dove into it because even Kevin Tedeschi has a book that, Vibrations. And so I went into reading that, and I dove into the Cayce material even deeper about what he was saying about vibrations and frequencies, and how learning music, not only like learning an instrument, but playing certain songs can bring well-being to our body, mind, and soul. The Pachelbel canon was one of the ones that he said could help balance our energetic body.
Which was
And
that
so I
one?
began-
What did you just say?
The Pachelbel canon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He
Yeah.
said that or Bach, I believe, that that can help attune our energetic body.
I'll make sure to
And
tell
other-
Kevin. He will be so happy to hear this.
Wonderful. Well, his books have been a big inspiration, helping me understand the Cayce material too. So,
All right, let's not get his head too big. No, just kidding. No, Kevin is a great teacher and proponent of this work.
Him and John Van Auken, are two other authors that I'm indebted to.
Yes.
Definitely indebted.
They certainly have helped bring this to the public.
Yes. And
Yeah, so you got inspired. You started doing some meditations with sound, and then so you went
Yeah.
and learned how to play the bowls, or you started intuitively.
Yes, my friend who was playing them began to teach me a little bit, and then I did go begin to do some other studies. I try to go back to India every year for a couple of months at a time. I don't know when I'll be able to do that again,
Yeah.
now that the world is in a sort of no travel right now. But I went over and I did go to study sound healing with Tibetan monks who taught me about the Himalayan singing bowls and how to use them and place them around people and on people's body. And my friend was helping me with the crystal bowls. And so once I came back, I believe it was 4 years ago, I began to go a little bit heavier into the sound meditations. And it really began to take off. Like, this seemed to be a really popular way that people began to at least be more open to experiencing meditation rather than just sitting in total silence, where many people often find that difficult because they see for the first time how active their mind is and how much chatter and is going on in there. That the sound seems to cut through that. It seems
Yes.
to maybe give them something to focus on, sort of like they're listening to a song, and it seems to the mind sort of is entertained by the sounds, and for many people, it tends to stay focused on it a little bit better.
Yeah,
And they do all.
yeah, I found that that chanting does, kind of activates the chakras, and it helps you focus. And sometimes I found that the sounds from outside, like one time I went on an A.R.E tour, and we went to Nepal, and we went up to the monkey temple, and the
Yes.
monks there were like, if you listen to a sound recording, you would hear them like, doing their prayers, and every now and then there'd be a drum or a gong that would sound. But if you were there live, you would see it was just like chaos, like people running around there, taking orders for lunch. Kids are, dogs and monkeys are all over the place. And then the guy every now and then bangs the gong, and the sound, the vibration of it, it's like, it gets your attention for that moment, and then everything goes back to the chaos. And then, 3 minutes later, bang, it hits the gong. So I've noticed, like, wow, it's such a, being there in person was different than if I would have listened to it. So I hear what you're saying, that there's something about the sound that brings us into the present moment. Like, the mind's always wandering, and that sound helps us come back to attention.
Absolutely. Yes, I totally believe that and feel that, and I've seen it. I've heard it through the experience of people who've attended the meditations, that the sound really gets them centered in their space and helps them to focus a little bit better, and it calls their mind back to the present moment. When the mind's wandering, when you do hit that bowl or you strike a gong or you
Right.
play that instrument, it's like a little chime or a little reminder saying to them, "Hey, where are you? Are you here? And come back, come back, come back." So yeah.
Now, I'm not, the Cayce readings on music and sound, it's not my area of expertise. I mean, I know a little bit, like I know he said that music is the bridge, I think, to the soul, something like that. Which readings would resonate with you as you've been exploring sound and sound healing? Or are there any that
There
that
are
come to your
many,
mind?
many.
Yeah.
In the Cayce material, there are so many. One is just the fact that he has said that everything is vibration. Everything in this universe is vibration, which has been reconfirmed by Einstein and the others, because everything's an energy.
Right.
And that he would say that the music, sound, vibrations, frequencies have the ability to bring well-being to an unbalanced body and a diseased, DIS-EASD mind. And so it helps to bring wholeness to them. He also would, in many readings, would tell people to learn about music, learn to play an instrument, because that will help to attune you to a more spiritual vibration. He would tell them to listen to certain types of music. He often stressed that for depression, stringed instruments were wonderful instruments to listen to help pull you out of that depression and lower vibrational rate. He,
Oh, my.
yeah, he also said that music was important, not only the language of the soul, but as you said, it was the bridge between the conscious mind and the unconscious or the spiritual mind. So there are so many readings about music, vibration, frequencies that became very, very important. But you also mentioned yourself, he was a big believer in chanting. And he gave that A.R.E chant
Yes.
to help
Yes.
balance the entire, energetic body. And you're supposed to feel it moving up from the lower part of your body to the top of your head. And so, and that's just another added sound or music quality that we're bringing into our lives when we utilize chanting.
Yeah, yes, we're starting to do meditations online because we don't do them here in person anymore. And I always make sure to incorporate the chanting, because for me it's like, I think that we all have like attention deficit. We all have monkey minds, and that I think there's these ways that I like the breathing techniques, and I like the chanting. And then there was a period there where I was doing Tai Chi and Qigong. And like you were saying, I think for action-oriented people, sometimes like Qigong or Tai Chi are ways to use the body to help you, to not ignore it, to kind of use it as part of your entrance into altered states or meditative states.
Oh, you are 1000% right with that. I totally agree. There are many people that, sitting in the silence can be very, a difficult thing to begin with, because like you
Yes.
said, they see nature of the mind and how it has a mind of its own, and it goes to think about this thought and that thought. And doing a meditation in motion with the Tai Chi or the Qigong and moving energy and feeling it move through your body and moving in a slow, mindful way can be a very helpful way to get them into that, transcended state. And we have a body for a reason. And some people think that meditation is to like transcend the body and be blissed out all the time,
Right.
but it's actually through the body and embodiment that we actually have access to these states. So it's not that we should be afraid of the body or not utilizing the body. We have it, and it is our instrument or tool to help us achieve that spiritual level of consciousness.
Very true. Now, you mentioned something earlier that stuck in my head. It's when you said you went to learn about sound, and I guess it was the gongs or the bells from Tibetans. And so
Yes.
in Tibet, in that, I don't know if it's Tibetan Buddhism, but they have a tradition of using sound for healing.
They do. It's not always well known because they believe that it can also be used in the wrong way. So they do have a tradition though that uses what are called Himalayan singing bowls. They're these metal bowls and bells, and you might have even seen. And yes, it was Tibetan Buddhism. I mean, you might have even seen yourself, maybe if you ever watched a documentary or something on the Dalai Lama, where in their rituals they holding in one hand what is called a vajra or a dorje, but in their other hand they're holding a bell,
Yeah,
and they're ringing the bell
always
as they're doing
ringing
their
it.
practice. Yes. And so sound does play an important part. They believe that the bell clears out negative energy. They believe that the sound also helps to awaken you to your divine mind, which in their tradition they call a Buddha nature. So it's a call to that. And it's also a call to the Dharma or the teaching or the truth. But they do believe that within Eastern medicine, so not just Tibetan medicine, but even Chinese and Japanese medicine, they believe that every part of our body carries its own unique vibrational rate, as Cayce also mentions in his material as well. But they
Yes.
believe that your heart carries a different vibrational rate than your liver. And that's why, liver cells don't become heart cells because they're encoded to vibrate at a different frequency. And if any disease or illness happens in the body, again, just as Cayce said, it's that something in that vibrational rate gets out of balance. But if you can restore the vibrational rate to that organ system, you can bring healing or wholeness back to that part of the body.
It's always seemed to me, when Edgar Cayce gave the readings about Egypt, and they were those temples of sacrifice and the Temple Beautiful. It's resonated with me that there was some use of sound that was also, I think they use crystals, I think they use a lot of things, but it did seem that there was the use of the vibration of sound to regenerate. I believe the Cayce readings, that some of them are like really out there, but Edgar Cayce supposedly went into one of these temples when he was like 400 years old, and he came out 7 years later looking like a 16-year-old. And so if you believe that, there's some way that we can regenerate our, whether it's the endocrine system and how, the hormones, and we can get this body back into it's almost like it's an incredible organism. It's like aging is something that maybe happens more out of neglect than it's like if you take better care, not just physically but also spiritually of your vehicle, it's going to last a lot longer, and it's going to last at a higher vibrational rate, and perhaps you'll get more spiritual mileage out of it by doing those practices.
Yes, I totally agree with you. I mean, in the Cayce readings himself, he says that the three aspects of ourself, our body, mind, and soul, they can't be out of balance. So if we're too caught up just in the care of the physical without taking care of the mind and taking care of the spiritual, we're out of balance. And we need to have all three working together. So we need to bring well-being to our body, well-being to our mind, and well-being to our spiritual component of our life. And when we do, we keep ourselves in better health and better well-being. And you mentioned the endocrine gland system. Many readings, he would stress how important it was to care for that. And his atomic iodine and all of those sort of things were to help purify the glands of the endocrine system, to keep them in their utmost, top shape and functioning and all of that. And he thought that that was very important. And so, yeah, I totally agree with everything that you're saying in terms that if we keep our body right, that it does delay the process of aging, which there was a study on meditation which proves that as well. And it was by Elizabeth Blackburn,
Mm-hmm.
an enzyme. She actually won the Nobel Peace Prize for this, for her discovery of telomerase, which is an enzyme that keeps your telomeres healthy and long. The telomeres are like a little cap at the end of our chromosomes, and stressful situations began to deteriorate the telomeres. Now, telomeres do shorten as we age as
Yes.
well, but what she found was that meditators have a higher level of telomerase in their system, which helps to keep the telomeres longer. So she believes that meditation is an anti-aging practice as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's just meditation is good on every single level, physically,
Absolutely.
spiritually, mentally.
Yeah.
Now, when
And
somebody, oh, go ahead.
the other thing that you did mention was ancient Egypt. And yeah, Cayce said that there definitely was sound healing practices happening in the temples in which they were using their voice and other instruments to bring well-being to a body and a mind that needed it.
You said they were using what?
Voice,
Voice.
and
The voice.
as well as some instruments. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that the A.R.E. chant was one that was used in ancient Egypt.
Yeah, it certainly. That's a powerful chant. I always get a lot from that. Now, for when somebody comes to one of your workshops, like the ones that you'll be doing here, what can they expect? Like what happens in a workshop, and should they prepare anything for it, or is it all just come as you are? Just what's the experience like?
It's usually just come as you are, but come with an open mind and an open heart. There's usually no prerequisites to any of the offerings that I do. They're typically introduction to meditation courses or an understanding of energy, frequency, and vibrations, and then a sound bath that's usually performed. The one that is coming up, though, is going to be virtual because we can't meet in groups right now.
Yes.
And so that will all be done through through a virtual
Ah.
platform.
And do you recommend that people have like a headset so that they can hear the sounds more kind of directly?
Excellent question. Yes, in this one, what I'm doing is a sound meditation experience in which I will be using crystal bowls and metal bowls and some other chimes and instruments to perform a meditation method. And yes, the headphones or earbuds or anything like that will help to personalize the experience and also help alleviate some distractions that may be
Yes.
happening around them or in a house or something like that. So in this case, I do recommend, and I'll state that at the beginning, that headphones would be helpful.
Okay, good. And so they're going to come, and it's basically going to be a meditative experience and a sound bath, and with the purpose of attunement, alignment, healing, all that kind of good stuff.
Yes, all of those things. Hopefully, the people will feel more relaxed, refreshed, centered, peaceful, and whole, and a deeper connection to something beyond just their physical, flesh and blood nature.
Wow, that sounds fantastic.
Thank you.
Now we're up against the clock here, but I still want to ask you a couple questions. We talked earlier. I do regressions and past life stuff, and anywhere along your path, have you gotten in touch with past lives? Are they at all related to what you're doing in this life?
I love that question. I usually don't share this,
Oh,
but
okay.
there was a time I was in a deep meditation retreat, and I was in what are called a cell. Now, a cell is where you're in a room that is sort of like sensory deprivation. It's dark, it's soundproof, so you're not hearing anything. And I got to a place of a concentrated state where, in my meditation, a figure came and presented a book to me. And when the book was opened, it was like a photo album. And as I'm moving through each page, it's pictures of different different civilizations, like different time periods. And what
Uh-huh.
I recognized was that it was myself in every time period.
Oh,
And
wow.
so, yeah, there was
So it's like a
one.
photo album of all your past lives.
Yeah, it was totally crazy, but interesting, and I loved it. And I usually don't share it because people will think I've lost my mind. But yeah, there was one in Egypt, there was one in a Native American civilization, but the one that really struck me the most was there was one in a Middle Eastern country where I was an incense dealer.
Oh,
Sold incense, and so it was pretty interesting. But what the common thread that I did find through them is they all seems to be something sort of like with some sort of spiritual component.
and
So I sort
why
of,
did the incense one stick out to you? The one as
I
an
don't know,
incense.
it was like funny. Like I never would have thought, like like somebody traveling the Silk Roads, gathering incense, bringing it to the place.
I see. So it was a profession you had no idea existed.
Yeah,
Now,
right.
are you drawn to incense? Like, do you like?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yes, and I do again. I do have to state that was probably definitely due to Cayce because he would say that the like frankincense when you start your meditations and these sort of things helps set the atmosphere, purify the environment, and so yeah, I use it all the time.
Oh, wow. So you were able to see in that album kind of influences of these different lifetimes that are kind of weaving together in this life. So maybe it was almost kind of giving you this gift so you could kind of realize that you have a lot of latent kind of abilities for the, that your interest in the things that you had wasn't coming out of nowhere, but it was coming
Yeah.
out of past life kind of influences. That's great. That's
Yeah.
great that you realized that.
What's also very interesting is I said from a very young period of time, like when I was like 4,
Yeah.
like I would tell my parents that I wanted to be a priest before I even knew like what a priest really, really was.
Uh-huh.
And there came to that stuck for years, like 4, 5, 6, 7 years old. I always said I'm becoming a priest, I'm becoming a priest, and I used to make my parents sit down. And rather than play, I used to perform mass for them, and I used to use Ritz crackers. I used to use Ritz crackers and grape juice.
This is my body. This is my whole week.
but then life happens and things
Yeah.
happen and hormones happen and things change. But I feel in my heart that I was connecting at that time to a past life experience also.
Yes. And did you, when you went to India, when you were getting so deep into meditation, did part of you, did you ever have the thought, I'm just going to become a monk? This just
Oh my
resonates with me?
Absolutely. And I mean, for a period of time, I sort of lived like that, where I was living precepts and monk vows and all of that for an extended period of time. And I told my mother, I mean, that I was going to go move and live in a monastery for the
Yeah.
rest of my life and all of that. But
I
yeah,
swear
that was.
we're twin souls separated at birth because I learned how to meditate when I was 17. I followed it religiously for 5 years. I did the twice a day. If I missed
Yeah.
one in those 5 years, it was a lot. Then I went to a 3-month retreat. I just loved it. I was going to go, I wanted to become just a monk. But again, in that 3-month retreat, it was like I got in touch with how many past lives I had had already doing that, and that this was a
Right.
lifetime to be out of the caves and with the people.
Oh, we are on similar wavelengths and paths because that was my whole intention. I said, but if I just do this, lock myself away somewhere, how can I truly be of better service
Yeah.
to humanity in the world? And so, I decided that, many, you know, times in my life, or like you said, maybe past lives, there were times where I was an introvert and solitary and to myself, but this is the
Yes.
time more for me to be out there and be of greater service with the knowledge I have.
Wow. Well, I've really enjoyed our conversation. I've enjoyed our divine appointment and meeting my twin soul.
Yeah.
But what I hope is, I hope someday we can, I'd love to work together. I'd love to try using hypnosis and regression along with sound bathing. And I think those two techniques together, I mean, you could, have you ever learned regression or any interest? Because I think it's a very connected process.
I've always been interested in path life regression. I've always been interested in learning it too. My schedule never gave me the opportunity to
Yeah.
really do that. But yes, it was definitely something I was interested in. And there was a local woman here in Florida who does hypnosis that before the quarantine, she doesn't do past life regressions, but she wanted to do a hypnotic guided meditation with me playing the bowls. But then once I came back from India, the world was shut down and it had to be canceled. But I totally believe that the two, and working with you would be a complete honor because I know all the great work you're doing. I've been to the Edgar Cayce. I've seen all the
Thank you.
great workshops and everything that you hold there. And to be in any way collaborate with you to
Oh,
me would
thank
be
you. Thank you. You're very, very complimentary. But our classes are now online. Like we're going to move our regression training online. So
okay.
I'll invite you. I'd like you to be my guest or our guest at the next class. If you can't make it, then we'll do the next one. But I'd just like to, your energy would be awesome to have in that
Thank you
class.
so much. I
So
love it. Thank you. I
we'll
really
be in
appreciate
touch
that.
and we'll figure out how that works. I know you're really, really busy. But God, time has flown by, but I've
Yeah.
really enjoyed our conversation. What a lot of fun it is to be in your presence.
Thank you. It's the same here. I truly appreciate it. I thank you for your time. I thank everyone at the A.R.E. for inviting me to do this talk with you this morning. And I truly appreciate, having this, even though it's not true in person, but have this face-to-face time with you. Thank you so much.
Sure thing. Hats off to you and your work. Thanks
Thank you.
again.
Yep. Thank you.